eso, caballero, acabó, miren para allá, ahora que esto empieza,
In the early hours of October 29, 2025, Hurricane Melissa made landfall near Chivirico, Cuba, as a powerful Category 3 storm, unleashing destructive winds, torrential rains, and widespread flooding across the island's eastern provinces. The storm arrived just hours after devastating Jamaica as a Category 5 hurricane, the strongest ever recorded to hit the island, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Melissa's rampage began in the Caribbean, where it struck Jamaica with sustained winds exceeding 160 miles per hour. The storm caused catastrophic damage to infrastructure, triggered landslides, and knocked out power and communication lines for hundreds of thousands. As it moved northward, Melissa weakened slightly but remained a formidable force as it approached Cuba's southern coast. By the time it reached Cuba, Melissa had downgraded to a Category 3 hurricane, packing winds of 120 miles per hour. It made landfall near Chivirico, a coastal town in Santiago de Cuba province, around dawn. The National Hurricane Center described it as extremely dangerous, warning of life-threatening storm surge, flash flooding, and hurricane-force winds across the region. Cuban authorities, anticipating the storm's arrival, launched a massive evacuation effort. President Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez announced that more than 735,000 residents had been relocated from vulnerable areas by Tuesday night. Shelters were activated across the provinces of Granma, Santiago de Cuba, Guantánamo, Holguín, and Las Tunas, all placed under hurricane warnings. Local officials urged residents to shelter in place, especially in mountainous and coastal zones prone to landslides and flooding. In Santiago de Cuba, images showed residents navigating flooded streets on motorcycles and bicycles as the storm approached. As Melissa swept across eastern Cuba, it unleashed intense rainfall that overwhelmed drainage systems and rivers. Flash floods inundated low-lying areas, while landslides disrupted transportation and isolated rural communities. The hurricane's eye wall battered Santiago de Cuba and surrounding towns, tearing roofs off homes, toppling trees, and damaging power lines. By mid-morning, Melissa had weakened to a Category 2 storm, but its impact remained severe. The Cuban Meteorological Institute reported sustained winds of 100 to 110 miles per hour and rainfall totals exceeding 12 inches in some areas. Coastal regions experienced storm surges of up to 8 feet, flooding homes and businesses along the shoreline. The storm knocked out electricity across large swaths of eastern Cuba. Power outages were reported in Santiago de Cuba, Guantánamo, and Holguín, affecting hospitals, emergency services, and communication networks. Crews were unable to begin repairs until conditions improved, leaving many residents in the dark and disconnected. Telecommunication towers were damaged, and internet access was disrupted in several provinces. Emergency radio broadcasts became the primary source of information for many Cubans during the storm's peak. Hospitals in the affected regions activated emergency protocols, relocating patients and securing medical supplies. The Ministry of Public Health deployed mobile medical units to shelters and remote areas. No fatalities were immediately reported, but injuries from debris and flooding were being treated across the region. International aid organizations, including the Red Cross and UN agencies, began coordinating relief efforts. Food, water, and hygiene kits were distributed to evacuees, while damage assessments were underway to determine long-term recovery needs. As Melissa continued its path northeastward, forecasters warned that the Bahamas would be next in line. A hurricane watch was issued for the southeastern and central Bahamas, with landfall expected late Wednesday or early Thursday. The storm was projected to maintain Category 2 strength, posing serious risks to the island chain. Meteorologists cautioned that Melissa's trajectory could shift, and its remnants might affect Bermuda and parts of the southeastern United States later in the week. Residents in the Bahamas were urged to prepare for damaging winds, flooding, and storm surge. In Cuba, the road to recovery will be long. Preliminary estimates suggest hundreds of millions of dollars in damage to homes, roads, agriculture, and public services. The government has pledged swift action to restore power, rebuild infrastructure, and support affected families. Community brigades have already begun clearing debris and assessing structural damage. Schools and public offices in the affected provinces remain closed, and transportation is limited due to blocked roads and damaged bridges. Images from Santiago de Cuba show flooded streets, collapsed buildings, and residents wading through waist-deep water. In Chivirico, the storm's landfall point, homes were flattened and trees uprooted. Despite the devastation, stories of resilience have emerged. Neighbors helping each other, volunteers delivering supplies, and emergency crews working tirelessly. Hurricane Melissa has tested Cuba's emergency response and resilience. While early evacuations and preparedness helped mitigate loss of life, the storm's ferocity underscores the vulnerability of Caribbean nations to climate-driven disasters. As Cuba begins its recovery, attention turns to the Bahamas and beyond. Melissa's legacy will be one of destruction, but also of solidarity, adaptation, and the urgent need for climate resilience across the region. Around 140,000 people are cut off by rising river levels as the storm lashes the country and heads toward the Bahamas. Melissa hit Jamaica as one of the strongest Atlantic hurricanes on record and caused major damage to public infrastructure. The full extent of the devastation there is unclear, with some areas inaccessible. We've heard from Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel, who said today that Hurricane Melissa had wrought significant damage on the island after it made landfall overnight. It has been a highly complex night with significant damage reported, Díaz-Canel wrote on X. I urge our people to remain vigilant, to uphold discipline, and to continue taking all necessary precautions. The president said his government had prepared for the worst-case scenario, that the measures it took had been effective, and that recovery efforts will begin as soon as conditions allow. More than 735,000 people had been evacuated by Tuesday evening, Díaz-Canel said in an earlier statement. Hurricane Melissa is now passing over eastern Cuba, causing river levels to rise and cutting off around 140,000 people, the government has said. A total of 241 communities, home to over 140,000 people, are reported to be cut off, it said in a statement. Roads have been blocked in Contramaster, north of where Melissa made landfall, while communities in Guantánamo and Ruta Martina are isolated. Melissa is now a Category 2 hurricane with winds up to 105 miles per hour. That means it is finally no longer a major hurricane, which are Category 3 or stronger, after being one for over 80 consecutive hours. The hurricane is centered about 45 miles northwest of Guantánamo, Cuba, and is moving north-northeast at 14 miles per hour. Melissa will soon emerge back over water and head toward the Bahamas. Cuba continues to experience damaging hurricane-force winds, storm surge, and flooding rain this morning. Winds will decrease by this afternoon, but rainfall could continue much of the day. Hurricane conditions are expected in the southeastern and central Bahamas today, along with a storm surge of 5 to 8 feet above normally dry ground. Rainfall totals could be as much as 5 to 10 inches. As we've been reporting, Hurricane Melissa has made landfall in Cuba. dumping up to 25 inches of rain with landslides anticipated. It is now a Category 2 hurricane with winds measuring up to 105 miles per hour. People in eastern Cuba have been fleeing their homes en masse, hoping to ride out Hurricane Melissa as it makes its way over after battering the neighboring island of Jamaica yesterday. The video above, filmed by news agency Associated Press, shows Cuban residents like Ejubij Figueroa moving their belongings from their homes into shelters in Santiago de Cuba in eastern Cuba. With much effort, we are waiting to ride out the hurricane to have the least possible losses, Figueroa added. Another resident, Miguel Díaz, said all she wanted was nothing bad to happen, and that thieves from here don't steal her refrigerator from her vacated home. We've been seeing video from overnight showing heavy downpours hitting eastern Cuba as people brace themselves for Hurricane Melissa. In video shared on social media via the Reuters news agency, torrents of water can be seen gushing down the streets of Cuba's second largest city, Santiago de Cuba. Residents can be seen wading through dirty rainwaters, picking up their dogs to shelter them from the deluge. Melissa is anticipated to unload 10 to 20 inches of rain across eastern Cuba, with up to 25 inches over the mountains, CNN's meteorologists have predicted. Such high volumes of water over steep terrain are anticipated to trigger flash floods and landslides.
Una de las comunidades que se vio seriamente afectados por la influencia del huracán Melissa, que lamentablemente ha generado fuertes precipitaciones. Según nos reportaba la Comisión Municipal de Emergencia, muchas familias se vieron